They're the worst.
They're the worst.
Welcome to The Worst Critics. I'm your host, Noah Davis, joined by John Pina. Oh, you're going to do it yourself?
I don't know. That's how we had done it. Go ahead. You introduced me. That's fine.
No.
Fine
Okay, yeah. So this is The Worst Critics reboot, and we have a new series going where we are going to talk about movies and their retellings or reboots or revisions or whatever you want to call them. And we've named it Reboot or Deboot. That title is pending for now, but it's the best we got, so we're going to get right into it with our first film, Ikiru by Akira Kurosawa. Kurosawa? I don't know. I like Kurosawa. I like saying Kurosawa. It makes me feel more intelligent for some reason.
It is, in fact, Kurosawa, so...
I don't care what Scorsese says, okay? I'm going to do it my way. And
sounds good to me.
How you want to start this off? You want to maybe talk about just the beginnings of the movie, or let's do positives? We're getting back into the groove, so...
I think a big picture takeaway, and then maybe we can do some details, but... I mean, overall, it's clearly a good movie. I have obviously a couple qualms with it, because like any old movie, there's, a certain either nostalgia you have to have for it if you've seen modern movie making, or like a keen sort of interest in this type of filmmaking, which I really don't have either of in this case. So
right.
Some of it is a little bit of a drag, but no, I mean, it's clearly a great movie. I see why there are so many people who talk so highly of not only this director, but this film in particular. I will say it is far too long.
Yes. Okay.
Far too long.
That's a good jumping off point, because I actually wanted to talk about Kurosawa's one of his movies that I watched, I don't know, 6 months ago-ish, called High and Low, and Spike Lee's actually rebooting it like this month or next month. And it's almost very similar to this movie, where the first hour and a half is impeccably timed. It has like great character, and then the second hour it kind of loses the steam. Like I don't know, it loses its own plot in a weird way. It tries to expand, but in expanding, it's kind of obfuscating the original intention. Because, I
was just saying, like, to me, this is like it's framed as like a clear 3-act film.
Yeah.
And in that first act, not only do you get like great character building, tremendous acting, and like a clear sort of like maybe even like pencil sharpened like fineness and point to how linear this thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second act, the character's growth sort of like meanders and is tangential, and so it like feels like a wholly separate like tone and direction, which I think is fine. But then to make it go on an additional half hour past that second hour, just to sort of like put the cherry on top and really get into all of your sort of like social commentary, like beating over the head with it, is like, ooh, it can be a drag. So if High and Low is anything like that, I hope you don't make me watch that.
No, we'll leave it for maybe like a year or so, because
okay.
High and Low is kind of fresh on my mind still, so gotta give it time to age.
Good.
Yeah, but my problem with just the third act is that it really kind of derails everything. The first act, you have that, I absolutely love that almost comedic scene where he's at the doctor's waiting, and the guy says, if they say it's a mild ulcer, it's cancer. Right. If they say you can eat anything but easily digestible, it's cancer,
Right.
And that was a fantastic way to introduce you to everything. And then the fiction writer in the bar, I really enjoyed his whole role, and I don't know why he didn't come back, but that might just be me. And there's it's super tight with that stuff. But then it becomes that third act where, he dies, and then it becomes non-linear, and you're reliving his last few months in other people's retellings, you know, and it just kind of, I don't know. I think the message is clear, but that last act just kind of goes against that message. It's like, oh yeah,
Oh,
he touched people, you should be good. Oh, if you're dying, you know, do that. But then it's like, oh, but the deputy mayor is still the big boss man, and life just moved on, and they all quit having the passion. So it's like, I get that to kind of subvert the plot, but at the same time, he died and really wasn't appreciated. Like,
see, I mean, and maybe this is just like looking too deep into sort of the artistry of it.
mhm.
I completely agree. I think one of the caveats I was trying to sort of like maybe like pull the thread for at the beginning and sort of my overview is that if this was done in a modern retelling, as I'm sure we'll come to figure out in this more recent remake, the social commentary balanced with the storytelling, like even in its style, right? We have a protagonist, we're following him as he gets introduced to things in his life and different characters. And then for, again, a whole like 45 minutes, we're now just like going back and having flashbacks from different people's point of view about this guy's life. Like in a sort of a modern lens, I don't think that direction of like three different acts told three different ways really is done, at least commonly. And in this case, I think it's a credit to the movie in that it doesn't keep that one, this is our takeaway message, right? Like it hits on the bureaucracy note and how burdened down sort of either a bureaucratic or corporate or just like sort of any boring desk job that has no sort of life or sustenance to it can be washed down. That, you know, the big oligarchs and bosses are always going to be the big oligarchs and bosses. Like there were so many different little threads that were left, and he didn't have to sort of tie them up in a clean, neat bow. I think that was almost intentional, I would say. So I don't know that it was like a gripe for me. But again, from a
Mhm.
modern lens, I do think if it was done that disorganized feeling, you would be like, this is not a movie for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I came away being just as depressed as I was in the beginning. Being,
Right.
you know, oh, he did something good, but no one gives a shit. Oh, awesome. Great. And, you know, of course, you know, you say it's intention, so it could have totally been like that was the intention to have that feeling or to have the audience feeling that. But I don't know. I feel as though there's something missed or I don't know. The whole deputy mayor thing actually kind of did it for me. I didn't. That's where my problem really arose. Not to
Yeah.
mention the death
Yeah.
transition. That was so abrupt.
Yeah, no, totally. The deputy mayor not only pissed me off, but had like far too many speaking lines
Hmm.
for how sort of, I mean, I'm not gonna say insignificant because in some ways the whole film revolves around him, but like as a character, he's just not interesting. And if he's, you know, the sort of big bad, so what? Like he can be an ethereal big bad. We could meet him. He could talk. It doesn't really make a difference. So to give him so many speaking lines and make him such a sort of integrated part in each act is kind of obnoxious.
Right.
Um, so I totally get that qualm with it. I will say I do think part of it is like nothing changed, but also a difference was made. Like those two things aren't mutually exclusive. So none of the culture in his office changed, right? Everyone went back to doing their bullshit. No one was inspired or took leaps and bounds to do passion projects like he did. But also, like, that community did get their park. The kids were enjoying it. The families were thankful for him. And the people who, like, knew who to thank and respect, I don't think ever like forgot that. The point was that the bureaucrats and the bullshitters did forget.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
So
yeah.
it does
Maybe.
take like an
Maybe.
exceptional person to like make that change over and over and over again. And maybe that's why they had like the dude go back and like look at the park again with his little hat and that sort of like solemn little ending bit. But
Yeah. Maybe that's
I'm not
on
sure.
me. I'm also not sure why. Just just a super small thing. When the cop came at the end, um, and he talks about the dude's song. I'm not sure why they're all sitting in silence while the main guy is singing. Like, I get it as an audience, but like, why is everyone just not talking anymore? It was a little
Right, right,
weird. Like,
uh,
I get it as a movie, but if we're
right.
talking an
In
actual
real life,
scene of people, why did
right?
everybody just shut up? I didn't really, I mean, it wasn't a big thing at all. But I
I'll
kind of
chalk it
want
up to
to,
1950s movies and questionable, maybe culture of the time. But again, I can't speak much to that.
right. And I kind of want to touch up on, the minutia, the small things, like how many shots relied on a mirror. I thought that was
A
really
lot,
interesting. It was clearly thematic and clearly intentional and, with purpose. So
right?
I respect that a lot, but after the first three mirror shots, it was a little much. I did enjoy the one mirror shot where you were able to see it was the guy on the piano when he was sitting down or he fell down.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
really enjoyed where you're able to see him and the woman beside him, but on a different mirror. So you had a full shot, and yet it was split up by a mirror. And obviously that's I take that as a not so subtle nod to reflect on life or reflect on everything around you,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I assume that's what Kurosawa was going for. I mean, I hope that's what I
Yeah.
gleaned from it.
Yeah. I mean, it would be hard to say that that's not the intention when the whole movie is about like introspection and reflection. So, yeah, I would say it would be wild if that wasn't the case. I will say this is probably a good point to just sort of talk about like the movie making
Hmm.
in general, like the direction, the art style. Like, I mean, I can't speak to casting because I don't really know any of these actors or actresses, but
Right.
um I mean the acting is like phenomenal. I mean, the dude, our main guy, Kanji,
Yeah.
is like insane. Like the way that he carries like the dread and gloom and like fatigue of it all, like even just from like initial diagnosis when he's really not like feeling horrible, but he knows something's going on, to like, trucking along, walking in the hallway, like is so viscerally real and awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, like I cannot comment. Like that's one of the better character acting I've seen for sure. Like I would say top 10.
Definitely. I mean, a legitimate performance, no matter what. Like, even if you didn't like the movie, you could not badmouth his performance as Kanji.
Right.
Especially in the scene where they're with the dance girls, or I don't know if they were strippers or whatever. We didn't really get
Right.
introduced, but they were in the back
Yep.
seat.
Yep.
And I don't know, just the way he carried himself, like you said, he's able to convey such a human element, such a real world grim sense of, oh, not much time left. Yeah,
Right.
or when even in the flashback scene when he had like the dyed black hair and he was at his son's baseball game. Uh,
Right.
even
Right. 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 Right.
even then he was able to, I don't know, give you a different sense of Kanji without being, the dying Kanji, and yet it was still perfectly well within that character.
Totally.
And
Totally. I mean, yeah, the acting is like 10 out of 10, and then the um the I think just the other component to like the filmmaking process would be, we mentioned the reflections, but like the cinematography as a whole, like the shots that were chosen, whether they were long tracking ones, like over the shoulders that again sort of did your classic like cuts back and forth as the dialogue happens. Those were sort of like few and far between. Really,
yeah,
they were like whole set pieces that were fixed for a time. And so you can imagine like these are, pages and pages and pages of like dialogue and direction that got turned into like minutes at a time of film. And obviously this is recorded on film back in the day too, which is like expensive and, costly just in terms of time. So, I mean, it's just crazy work.
yeah. I mean, especially when you see the end scene of the playground. How the hell? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah,
Was it
yeah.
even? It looked like the same location. So did they actually have a flooded culvert and then made a makeshift playground? And then it's wild how much thought went in and care went into these sets and just the set pieces themselves. Especially like City Hall, that those quick cut introduction to City Hall where the women are going around to each
right, right. Each
department.
department.
I
Yep.
mean, how, of course they cut and things, but the idea that they were ready for, this shot at this room, this shot at that room, it's actually just impressive when you think about it, just as like a blocking or just a planning aspect to it. Or the dance hall where there were a lot of where you're seeing his hat get stolen,
Right,
where
right.
it's tracking him and then tracking right and then left, then right. I mean, there's something to that. Kurosawa does
Yeah,
have a style for sure.
right. And it's beautiful, it's intentional,
Hmm.
and it's like meticulous. So I mean I understand especially why like other directors are really like inspired by it. I will say one of the elements to me that was um fine for this movie. I don't think it was excellent, and I think the few times it shined were like character specific. Was the sort of just like general writing. I don't think there was
Yeah,
really much substance there. Like, sure, the plot's fine, but I think the movie's heavily carried by the either actors, the great individual character writing, like again the writer that he met, and our protagonist himself. But otherwise, it's kind of like lazy. Like I think there's like maybe a few quotables either from our main character or like when the writer's like, or maybe it's the narrator, which is a whole separate problem we need to discuss.
yeah.
But
Actually, I forgot
like
to mention that one.
the like ecce homo, like behold the man thing,
Hmm.
like when they're at the bar, and then like, oh, I can't worry about that. I don't have enough time to worry about that. That whole line. There's a couple good one-offs, but not particularly great writing in my opinion.
I will say I was kind of not peeved or anything, but the fact that they relied on him saying it's just, it's just, instead of saying I'm dying, or, at least trying to say I'm dying, it felt weird.
Right. Like, how
Every
hard is it to
single
say to your
time.
family?
Yeah, every single time someone asked him about it, it's just. And I get that does kind of help shape our idea of the character, but I don't know. I don't know. I feel as though the main character, weirdly enough, was the worst written character. Like the
Oh,
performance
yeah,
was
yeah.
amazing,
Right.
but
Performance amazing, but writing bad. No, agreed completely.
because as I said, the guy in the doctor's office, he was hilarious. The guy, the fiction writer, he was great. Even the girl, his girl coworker or underling, she was
Right.
awesome.
Yeah, she was
Like
awesome.
she was funny. She had, lines that were spry and, full of life. The whole point of the character, it made sense. Whereas he was just kind of, reacting. It felt like he was only reacting to everything rather than
Right.
actually being the action of the dialogue. And yeah,
No,
right
completely agree.
now we can talk about the narrator.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it needs to be dived into much. If you want to go through our back catalog, you can really come to learn this about Noah and I, and hopefully most moviegoers. Being talked down to has to be one of the most annoying things in the world.
It's
And
the
that's what text
worst.
outros do. That is what narrators do. Either have it as a part of your story, have the characters do it, have the characters say it. Why the fuck would you pull me out of the movie
Yep.
to remind me that it's a movie, to tell me what's going on, like I'm either an idiot or can't possibly like understand why you would have chosen to do this? Like, narrators are insane. Now, granted, it's a 1950s movie, blah blah blah. I don't care. It's bad. Bad, bad, bad.
I especially don't like it when the narrator is either A, non canon, so it's just a voice from nowhere, or B, it's an element that they literally abandon for most of the movie.
It's
So
it's it's quite literally at the beginning of each of the acts and the ends of each of the acts. I think so. There's like six times he comes in.
it just felt weird because there were times where I was half expecting a narrator, and then it wouldn't narrate, and then I didn't expect a narrator, and it did narrate, and yeah, I can't get behind that. It's almost as though they're trying to shove a book's narrative or, structure into a movie, and that just doesn't work. It'll never work in my mind ever.
Well, I mean, again, one of the most beautiful, fascinating, like enjoyable parts of a movie is being like sucked into a world and really like experiencing the emotions, going through the world with the characters.
Hmm.
And the second you introduce a omnipotent voice, you have to, again, whether it's conscious or unconscious, be pulled out of the movie to
Hmm.
remind you of something that you're being told. Like, and at no point did I like, he didn't add anything
No,
to the underlying story.
no.
He was like, there he is, our protagonist.
I
Like maybe
hated that.
maybe the one at the very beginning, because sure, you're looking at an X-ray of cancer, whatever. We don't even have to go into that. It's like, what? It was bullshit looking X-ray. Like, but
We'll actually hold on. I do want to ask you about that, but to piggyback off the narrating thing, I actually hated the beginning being a narration because we get that information literally within 10 minutes. I don't I don't understand why the narrator says, "Oh, he's got stomach cancer," and then in 10 minutes with the really crisp, funny, "Oh, the stomach ulcer thing," we get that information. So why would they feel the need to convey the information so obviously and so in your face when the script does it? I It doesn't make sense to me.
yeah, no,
It's not
uh, it just literally adds time to the runtime in an already sort of long and again meandering movie.
yeah, it's not as though it's adding anything meaningful, especially when it's literally just in the script. Like you literally see it, you hear it, the characters say it. So why would you just reframe it in a worse, a more obvious or maybe too obvious way? But I do want to ask, the X-ray thing, what was that about?
Just like, you know, again, doctor, by the way, the
I should have said Dr. John Pena. I should have. That's my bad. That's my bad.
the well, there's a couple things. Okay, one, it's actually super cool that they were able to put the like actual like plain film of the radiograph cut into the film. Like if you
Mhm.
think about that just as like art and like engineering, it's kind of sick because they didn't like record with a film camera the X-ray. If you go to the whatever timestamp, like the 2 minute whatever timestamp that is actually is happening, it is actually the film, which is crazy because like the X-rays are called films, right? So the film is the film, and then what you see, because again it's like such poor quality, and back then one like the amount of radiation they used, and how they actually framed and got good composite images is like bad. So I can't actually tell, other than like questionably what is like a stomach bubble, aka like air within a clear contained sac in the belly, what the fuck is in this picture. Like
Like if you
it's
were a
just like a
doctor
nonsense
looking
part.
at this,
Right.
you'd be like,
Like
I don't
there's no
know.
anatomy here. Like I can't clearly point to what is bowel gas or again, clearly the stomach. There's like all sorts of what we would call like radio opaque or very bright white imaging, which would be like bone or again, sometimes like a solid mass. But really all you see is a huge amount of bright white. So sure, that could be the cancer, but like there's no vertebral structures or ribs to like frame the anatomy. So I could, in good conscience, say this is clear signs of cancer, like the narrator says. I'm like, this
Right.
is a big white blob on my screen.
You have said it's a mild stomach ulcer, is what you're saying.
Right. Well, and that's a whole separate thing. I'm sure maybe in the 50s that's what they maybe would have said, but like, nah.
That misdiagnosis doesn't
You-
actually happen.
well, like you can't call a stomach ulcer on an X-ray unless it's
Oh,
like some huge, massive fucking thing.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, like that's not how they're diagnosed.
Huh.
You would not be able to, in good faith, call an ulcer on an X-ray.
Huh. Wow. Terrible script. Awful
Yeah,
script.
yeah.
Garbage.
But that's besides the point. I had a couple more just like random tidbits. I think
Yeah, go
before
for
we
it.
maybe go back to overall and sort of square away this put our bow on this film.
Mm-hmm.
One is I don't know. Do you use Letterboxd?
No, not anymore.
Yeah, I don't use it regularly, but I will, in particular, if I watch either a good movie or a recommended movie, like
Mm-hmm.
pull it up after the fact and sort of just like read some of the comments because I usually think that the nerds that write on Letterboxd who get like high rated reviews or a lot of comments tend to write like either funny or interesting stuff.
Right,
So I'm just
right.
gonna read one because it made me chuckle. It's just a one sentence review and it says, "Not the funniest, but definitely the most emotionally affecting episode of Parks and Recreation I've ever seen." I was like, damn, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I mean, it does remind you of that for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, because it's the same, oh, here's bureaucracy at its finest,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all sort of ham fisted and bullshitted. And obviously, that tone is a much different tone than this movie, but it was so funny.
That's pretty good.
Um, and then second was just a random thing because I wasn't sure how to say it, like Watanabe, his like last name.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went on like a deep dive because this is the type of nerd I am about like what that surname is.
Okay.
Apparently, it's like ferryman, and is again, I would say like adjacent to the Smith of the U.S. sort of surnames. Um, but it's only like top 10 most common and not like number one. So maybe more like, Jackson or Clark in terms of commonality. But the reason I bring this up is because our character's name is Kanji Watanabe. But literally, the patient, like the character that you like, the one
Mm.
who's like describing to him, oh, if they say it's an ulcer and you're eat what you can, that guy's last name is Watanabe. So I got confused when I was on the Letterboxd, and
Mm.
I was like, wait, is this the character or is this the actor? And it's like, no, it's just apparently like a super common name. So that's why it's like, this is Jake Clark, our protagonist. You're like, oh, okay, okay.
Also, shout out to Ken Watanabe, the guy who's in like all the Nolan movies.
Oh, is that his last name?
Yeah, yeah, that's the guy who plays
Uh,
Ra's al Ghul, the fake Ra's al Ghul, and
right,
the
right, right,
Inception
right.
guy. Yep, yep.
I had no idea his name was
It's our
Watanabe.
boy
That's
Ken
interesting.
Watanabe. And
Cool.
I think I've went over most of my notes. Do you have any sort of for the audience listening now? We're gonna have kind of our closing thoughts on the review, and then we're going to have a section where we think a reboot, the reboot that we watch next week, might improve. So, did you have any closing thoughts on the review?
Yeah. In closing, a quote I already said to you. I feel like this is a Citizen Kane meets 12 Angry Men. There's
I
clear old movie directional, stylistic, beautiful, artistic things that are done here. Some of which are like novel and interesting, in particular for the time the movie was made. But fuck me, like Citizen Kane is this long, meandering, a little again like ham-fisted at times to use that word again. Like
do
it
we want to start this
really,
episode off with hot takes like that?
it really suffers from being a little indulgent in itself and going on probably 30 to 40 minutes longer than it absolutely needed to.
Okay, I get Citizen Kane, but how 12 Angry Men I think is one of like the perfect movies of all time. So I don't
No, that's what I'm
understand.
saying. The good elements are from 12 Angry Men and the
Oh,
bullshit's from
okay.
Citizen Kane. But both are so highly regarded, and this one's so highly regarded that it can be put in that lens.
John, this is supposed to be a reboot, not a rehash, okay? People are already
Sorry, sorry.
aware of our opinions on Citizen Kane. Well, the
Yeah,
two people are probably
yeah,
aware of that.
yeah. Well, if you were listening to this and you like Citizen Kane, I don't like you.
Wow. Wow. He didn't mean
You
it.
can,
He didn't
yeah, you
mean
can
it.
write that one down for yourself.
No, he didn't mean it. Okay. That's it for the review. You want to move on to the
Yeah, I think things I'm hoping the reboot makes, and of course I can know just from like looking at certain things just on a quick, search from when we were debating which movies to watch. I think it's going to fix the runtime issue.
Oh, really? Okay.
However, it could suffer from one of two fates because of that.
Hmm.
One, it takes out the narrator and some of the messy bullshit that comes with like some of these really long tracking shots where again the character or excuse me our actor got to show his emotional and facial expressions like act without speaking in a great way, but also makes the movie like frivolously long. It could just suck out all of those aspects. The other way it could do this is really boil this and water this down to such a point, that rather than, or actually, excuse me, yeah, water it down rather than boil it, since it is not a concentrated, refined movie. It is a diluted milk toast sort of mess and really lacks like that substance and character and driving force. But I'm excited because the casting's actually really good. I love what's her name, Amy Wood, the girl from Sex Education.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's like the bubbly, whatever, intern coworker.
Yeah, and not to, I guess it's not a spoiler at all, but we know Bill Nye's gonna fucking hit.
Right,
He chews up scenes. I do really love that watered down or boiling thing. That was a good line, actually.
Thank you.
Yeah. Side note, I might have to reuse that or something. Do something with that.
Right.
That was really good.
Yeah, because boiling, right? You're taking the water.
I like
out,
that.
So
No, I really like that a lot.
Watering
Yeah.
it down, it's diluted mess.
So I hope the movie we watch, the second part of this episode, Living, I think it's 2022, was it?
22.
Yeah, I really hope it. Honestly, I think if they just fix that wake scene, I think it could go a long way. If they touch that up, clean it up, maybe even get rid of the deputy mayor aspect, I think it really could, improve upon the formula. Not saying, oh, it'll be a better movie if it does that, but it will have a better, version of events, or at least the third act. And I don't know. I don't exactly know what Living could do to make it better, or make it not more palatable, but maybe more relatable to a Western audience. I don't know if what things might get lost and what things just get pushed away, and maybe it even loses some of that charm because of it. So hopefully that's not the case. But if I were to make a reboot, my biggest issue would be that third act.
Oh yeah, for sure. And again, like culturally, I mean, that's not the way sort of quote unquote Western funerals are.
Right.
It's not
exactly.
people celebrating and eating and reminiscing. It's like either a very like clean cut suit and tie like funeral affair, or like people sitting around a house at a wake, and it's more sort of solemn and less serious conversation, just more like polite. Oh, how are you? Let's talk about anything other than the dead guy.
Right. The whole thing where they're like talking about Kanji just in front of his son and brother. I was wondering, is this a normal thing in Japan?
Right.
Seems kind of rude, guys.
Any specific predictions? I have a couple. I think that I want a hard call now.
You make your predictions, and I'll maybe have one.
So one, because it's a movie made after like 2008, I hope, but I kind of expect there to be some bullshit ham-fisted like I gotta stop using ham-fisted. What the hell? Some bullshit.
Forced.
Yes, very forced. Changed in tone pop song for some solemn scene.
Fuck.
And I hope it isn't the song he has to sing. That being said, the song he has to sing, because this is again now like a UK movie. I don't know if it's truly set like in England versus Ireland or Scotland or where, but they could do some folky song from one of those, like, again, Celtic or like other like sort of more quote unquote indigenous languages that maybe will make it ring true.
But you're expecting like a 70s or 80s song.
Yeah, I'm expecting some sort of pop nonsense.
I mean, to be fair, in Ikiru, it is a song from the 19 teens, so maybe in the 50s, people kind of thought that was a pop song, just like, oh, that old song, okay,
No, it is. That is how it was. I think that was the point. Like when the piano guy's like, "Oh, you want me to sing that old like, pop love song from the 1910s?"
Audience,
and he's like singing it solemnly. So,
I mean, that is actually a fair point, because Yeah, what song could he use? Because, obviously different fucking nation, so different
Right.
song catalog. Uh, yeah, huh.
And I don't know if it's, I guess if it's set in 50s UK, it's different than if it's set modern UK.
Right.
So I don't know that either.
You think if it's
If it's set
50s
modern,
UK, they'll go even further back?
correct. Yeah, like then maybe they'll do a folky thing. But if it's set modern, I think they'll do that 70s or 80s song garbage.
Yeah, I mean, from what little I've gathered, just seeing the poster, it does seem it's kind of retro.
Right. Agreed. Agreed. So
Now my prediction, I mean, I can't exactly, other than predicting that, the same plot or whatever. I feel as though I have a bad feeling that we're gonna lose some of the humor. And I hope I'm wrong. But I could see a director thinking kind of the message of the movies gets taken away by some of the humor. And like I don't think that, but I just think someone else would think that.
yeah. Well, and especially, I mean, again, if you are going to make this again like an hour 30, hour 40-minute movie,
Mm-hmm.
something's got to give, and it certainly could be these comedic scenes for sure.
Okay.
So
I think that about does it for part one. Uh, so I'll just explain it to the audiences. Basically, just explain it to both of us and getting it out loud on on record. Um, we're gonna have two parts posted every 2 weeks, or a two-parter episode posted every 2 weeks. And this is about the time where I don't. Should I even put an outro? Or just
for
kind of
this
end the
episode,
episode?
I think we just end it.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to end it. And then next week, that's when you'll hear our outro. And we'll probably put maybe a little track in between the two parts so
Yeah.
you know whether we're talking about Ikiru or living. But yeah,
See you in a
that's
few seconds.
the first part of the first episode of the official reboot of the Worst Critics reboot or deboot.
Woo.
All right, let's talk about Living, the 2022 remake or retelling of our first movie, Ikiru. How you want to start this?
I mean, do big picture overview first.
Always big picture.
I think for starters, I'll say horrible movie. I would never watch it. I would rather watch a back-to-back Last Airbender, Jack and Jill.
Wow, I'd rather watch Captain America 4 Brave New World.
No, I'm just kidding, dude. It is a really good movie. I think the big takeaways are, as you said to me before we started recording, they've really just listened to our episode that we haven't uploaded.
Yeah, I don't
Like,
want to say we're soothsayers or anything like that. We're good at predicting, but
yeah, or we've watched a lot of movies.
we're pretty all right. I mean, there were multiple things that were ripped straight from our mouths, and they incorporated it or removed it from Living. Um, I kind of want to, you know what? I kind of want to just start from the beginning and say I love the pseudo retro vibe it gave. They even used that original stock footage from some movie or something. I don't know how they did that. It was
Yeah,
all
yeah, yeah. The grainy film that's old, and as opposed to like even if it's modern film, it's either black and white or in color, and not this like weird grainy like it's been aged. Like that's what it is. It's old film.
right. Yeah, and
It's
then
like light exposed.
they even match the color palette going into the modern camera and film, and it kind of blows in my mind. I mean, just the first 5 minutes were kind of mind blowing just for that.
Yep.
And then it fit, of course, it fit with the retelling or the remake. That way, they didn't really have to change a ton because it was kind of roughly the same time period as Ikiru, I think. Roughly, I didn't get a year.
Yeah.
I didn't hear
Yeah,
a
I didn't
year,
get a year,
but
but I would say 50s. 50s seemed very reasonable.
yeah, I mean, and like even like the blues and the oranges, just it sets such a tone immediately. I mean, and swiftly. And I even kind of enjoy the what was his character's name? Kind of the main secondary character, the one guy,
Yeah, the young guy, the same
Wakefield
sort
or
of.
something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
Japanese are so
I
good.
enjoyed that as an introduction because A, it beats a fucking non in universe narrator, and B, it allows you to come into the story from an outsider's perspective because he's what, the new guy, it's his first day or whatever, and that's how you're introduced. And that's a lot like, watching a new movie or watching a movie that's a retelling of an old movie. It gives you a fresh perspective. That way you can kind of latch on to something to then be introduced to old ideas or, retellings of old ideas.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback, I think in that first, again, I think they similarly did it in maybe not quite thirds, but three parts. That in that first part, their focus is really like crystal clear, but they still take the time to make beautiful shots. And rather than really lengthy, like emotional things, I think one, because they can use color, and two, just modern filmmaking in general, they have more tools at their disposal to make things pretty and interesting. Um, it was just beautiful, like him
Mm-hmm.
getting into work and everything, rather than being this like sort of austere and dry, but also like suffering heavy. This is very much a lighter film throughout and much more quote unquote artistic um in terms of like its intention. I feel like everything was really well lit, really beautifully shot. There were a couple of cool shots. Again, they did like that mirror thing in the
Yep.
kitchen in the dining room. I don't know if you caught
Clear,
that.
clear
Yeah.
homage.
Yeah, lots of homage, but they do things novelly, and we can jump into that next. But they, I think, really pay their respects to the OG
Yes,
and
that's,
make
yes.
definitive improvements across the board.
Yeah, you can tell it's with respect. It's not trying to ruin or take away from the original. It's trying to enhance it in ways that, or in the only ways you can, really. It's kind of hard to just completely remake something different than itself. So you do have to keep in line with, the plot and all that and the vibe, but in small touches. I mean, like you said, the mirror thing, they did that 2 or 3 times, and it just clear as day. You could tell they were paying homage and they were just respecting the source material. And I think that's almost the most important part to making a retelling or a reboot,
For sure.
arguably.
No, for sure. I completely agree. And again, to go through the positives of Ikiru that I can recall off the top of my head, I mean, clearly our lead does the role insanely well.
Mm-hmm.
I will say they're going for different versions of this character, I think,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
where the OG actor had to play, again, for lack of a better word, that sort of suffering dynamic in the first act so much harder. Like, partially because they made these huge, long tracking shots of him barely able to walk, him not able to stomach food, him being in like clearly miserable pain, hunched back, like shuffling to walk. And in this one, he's clearly going through stuff, but it is not as debilitating and he's not as sort of heroic in a sense.
Yeah, it feels like
But
he's much more
goddamn, Bill Nye.
accepting. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, accepting.
Yeah, Bill Nye. I mean, that was a prediction. That was the easiest prediction to ever make in the world. He absolutely chewed every single scene. I mean, he killed it. Absolutely killed it. I literally can't say enough about his acting prowess. It's
Exactly.
impossible to overstate it.
Right. So, in comparison to the first film, I think that one's worth watching for the protagonist's acting, if nothing else. This one has the benefit of that exact same phenomenon with a really good movie underlying it that doesn't make you waste an extra hour of your time.
Yes. Oh, man. The fact that it was shorter, doesn't necessarily mean it's better. But in this, brevity was key to making this an enhanced experience as opposed to the first one. Because it's funny, they took out, 45 minutes? And I couldn't exactly tell you.
Rather, they took out an hour.
Well, whatever. But I couldn't exactly tell you what precisely they took away. I can tell you the changes they made, but was there anything they actually removed completely? Like, there wasn't a huge sequence that they just ripped away. So it's curious how they were able to shorten it without any, hindrance to the actual retelling. And
Yeah, funnily enough,
impressive.
yeah, I there's one small thing I could tell that they removed, which was again unnecessary for the plot, and then they added something, so really net even. I'm fine to say net even. The thing they removed was the uncle, right? Like there was no extra
Right. Yeah, the
character
brother.
of
Yeah.
like establishing why was there an affair going on or what's happening with the estate, which again was totally unnecessary in the first movie. And in this one, they added, so they took that away in this one, and then they added the whole whatever Amy Lou Wood being present at the end and like a love interest for like our young guy who's sort of getting the baton passed to him.
Mm-hmm.
And there
Mm-hmm.
was like a clear baton passing intent.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So yeah, I mean, which I think was sort of necessary, like it made that ending scene a lot more clear in this one. Remember we discussed at the end of
Yes.
Ikiru, what was the purpose of it? Like he was looking over it. Is it because like he does want to keep that light in him? And in this one, they were like, yeah, he wrote him a letter. He's like, you're gonna fucking carry this torch. Don't forget these little things are big things,
Yeah, someone actually
etc.
appreciated his work instead of, oh, his random underling happened to be sorta inspired by the playground. It was, it might have been, of course, less subtle and more on the nose, but I think it's absolutely necessary for the overall, just the feeling you get from a movie. Uh, it allowed there to be some sort of, I don't know, a calm or serenity knowing, oh, yeah, okay, he didn't just die for nothing. Whereas Ikiru is like, wait, did he just die for nothing? Like, okay,
Right.
cool. No one cared. And then, I might as well just piggyback off that. Might as well just go to the ending. The police officer made way more sense in living.
Yep.
Made way
Yep.
more sense.
Yep.
I mean,
I
literally,
mean,
the issue with Ikiru is like, yeah, the cop saw him, but what was his point? What was the
right. Why
issue
did he come to
there?
the wake thing?
Yeah, whereas this, okay, that makes sense. He saw him at the park and he sees the new guy, the guy, the torch bearer. He sees him at the park. Okay, and then they have a conversation. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Not just a cop being like, "Yeah, I saw him before he died." Just that's
Well,
it. All
and
right.
I think I chalked it up last time to sort of maybe either in general Eastern customs and culture and or that time period customs and culture
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't find it so strange that the guy would feel like so much shame that he didn't do something more to like go and tell the family. Like it was like a shame driven thing. But again, this plot device, at least for my brain in this day and age, totally makes more sense than some stranger showing up to the house like, just so you know, I saw him die. Sorry.
And even
Like,
post wake, when the coworkers are talking about like, oh, did he know what changed? It makes so much more sense for them to talk about it in their train car that we saw. That's how we got introduced to the world. So now it's
right,
almost kind of
right,
outroing
carrying
us
that
out of
thread.
the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
a great symmetry, which leads me to talk about just the tightness of the script. I don't think there was a single unnecessary line in living script. It felt
Yeah, no, totally.
specific and extremely deliberate without meandering around or wasting time. And I even liked how the fiction writer was turned to like a porno movie writer or whatever.
Right.
I I appreciated that, and then his character was just as solid as the Ikiru fiction writer character, if not more so, because I felt more connected with the movie writer just because you
Well,
know
he
uh,
got established before
yeah,
we like our
yes.
character meets him. He was talking, we were in that place. We weren't sure if our protagonist was even there or coming there. We weren't sure where we were going to follow him and we immediately got, oh, this is who this guy is and he sort of lives and breathes for these ideals and then boom, our homie sitting down the fucking, strip of the diner and is like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" So, yeah, I mean, I think I would agree. The writing here is really masterclass, which brings me to a point I wanted to bring up.
Hmm.
Do you know who this writer is?
No, I don't look up anything like that.
Well, I mean, it's in the fucking. It was in the whatever the titles that show up at the beginning.
You know.
I'm gonna butcher his name, but he's a knighted Englishman, technically English Japanese, who his name is Kazuo Ishiguro.
Hmm.
He's a humongously famous novelist who I'd never heard of, but he's
Oh,
literally a Nobel Prize winner.
oh, dang. I
Yeah,
mean, I
I mean, like,
guess if anyone were to write a British produced retelling of a Japanese classic, yeah, okay, that makes
I know. I
sense.
was like, I feel like he was hand selected for this somehow and really killed it. So obviously, he doesn't need any more praise. He got a fucking Nobel Prize in literature, but good for him because that was insane.
Yeah, I
And I
mean,
think he was nominated for best screenplay for it too.
good. I mean, because just the way they consolidated everything, even the deputy mayor or whatever they called him, um, even that was better because he was privately talking to the coworkers when he made his whole spiel, and the spiel was much shorter and much more impactful because it was almost instantaneously of, oh, guy died, he really shouldn't take all the credit, I'm out.
Right.
And
I
Ikiru is this drawn out 15 minute conversation, and you're like, okay, I get the point here, I get the purpose.
Yeah, I think a point that I made in sort of our predictions that I'm very happy to see did happen was they took the chance of shortening the runtime
Hmm.
and really concentrating this film. And in the concentration, they found a lot of balance. So, yes, they took away some of those long tracking, again, sort of solemn, sad, like almost like torture porny shots from the sense of like
Yeah.
you're just watching this guy like suffer.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
They took those out and by no means do you not feel still the weight of any situation, but it allows some like reflection, it allows for some levity, it allows for some other characters experiences of a moment. It's not just like our shared discomfort for the protagonist. And it's again why scenes like the singing in the bar or the pulling aside of the girl who's now at the wake, which is a way better addition,
Hmm.
um, is really, really impactful. And it doesn't really have anything to do with the character in and of himself. It's just really nicely done.
I fully agree, and I also want to bring up that it kind of added layers to his son and daughter-in-law. They got way less screen time, but A, they weren't just giant pricks like they were in Ikiru, and B, I thought that scene was hilarious where she's serving the shepherd's pie.
Yeah, no,
I,
that was really I I would be hard pressed to find a better scene because everything about that scene's good. The discomfort, or I mean, if you include the scene slightly before where he's like standing in front of the mirror prepping for the conversation,
yeah.
because that's great. And
Hmm.
then into the dinner service, the son can't get off the newspaper. He's like waiting for to be served. You're seeing the reflection in the mirror of the daughter-in-law while she's preparing the last of the food. Like the whole thing is so good.
Yeah,
And then
and
she like snaps and he's like, no, I completely agree with you as
yeah.
well.
Can't do anything in London without people hearing about it anymore. He's just like, yep, you're right. Just okay. Yeah, and I mean, again, it's adding layers to characters that in the original in Ikiru, the son and the daughter kind of sucked ass, and I didn't have any sympathy for them. But having them in this, where there's, again, they have less screen time, but they feel much more human. And I think I complained about it in the part one of this episode. Um, Ikiru, the kanji main character, the whole it's just annoyed me after a while. So it was great to see Bill Nye not do any of that. It was
Well,
still hard for him to say,
right,
but he didn't
right.
rely on the singular um. you know, and I think again, that's just the tightening of the script.
Yeah, I mean, and possibly just his masterful acting, because I do think there were a couple of times where they clearly had that like illusion to it,
Yeah, yeah.
where he would start to, uh, you just, and but only like once or twice. You know, it wasn't every time he started talking that happened.
Yeah, and one of the times was in the mirror where he's literally trying to figure out how to say it.
Right.
You know, I
Right.
mean, I think that adds to it where, okay, yeah, I get it. It's hard to say. And, you know, he's saying it for the first time aloud or the second time because he told the movie writer. But yeah, just having to phrase that beforehand is a lot more impactful than just stumbling over your words the entire time, anytime anyone asks you about anything. Like, and that's, you know, that's what I like. But I mean, I feel like we've covered a lot of the positives, if not all of them. I do want to say just a couple negatives.
Go ahead.
One, the ulcer thing. They got rid of the hilarious ulcer scene. I thought
I know. I thought that was gonna be your biggest qualm. They got rid of your favorite character from the
total
first movie.
disservice. Oh man, that one, that's actually a complaint. But you know, let's say somebody had never seen either of these. I'd probably say watch Living and at the same time be like, well, they did mess up one thing, you know. I would still have kind of an asterisk on there. Or like, well, there's one thing that's worse. Um, yeah, the Olsey joke and also the baseball scene change, the flashback to his son.
Right.
I
It's just like an arbitrary cricket game
yeah,
where
and
there's like clapping.
yeah, the son did it successfully, and that was it. And that I do think that did take away just a tiny bit of depth. Whereas in Ikiru, he sees his son succeed, and then his son, you know, fucks up and tries to steal third when that clearly wasn't the call. And then, you know, the people beside him are like, ah, what a dumbass kid. And Kanji is just, he accepts that. It's like he doesn't clap back at the guy saying that. He doesn't do anything. He just accepts that his son fucked up and almost that he's kind of ashamed a little bit. Whereas in this, Bill Nighy's son just hit the cricket ball or the wicket, whatever that thing's called, and
Right.
then that's it.
Yeah. I mean, I go back and forth. I do think it lost something by not having the levity and the forecasting and the character know going in that he's gonna have cancer, but at the same time, I think it was set up in such a way that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, no.
What I really disliked in this version was in the first one, because of that setup, when the doctor says it, it doesn't matter really what the doctor says as long as it's the same thing as the guy said. There's that sort of feeling of authenticity. In this is the laziest writing to me. It does drive this plot forward, so it isn't like egregious, but the doctor literally said nothing. He just said, "Man, these are hard to say. Sit down. I got the results back." And it's like any
Oh,
movie, any person, any place can do that. And it's fine if it does it like this. But for a movie whose writing is so good and does such great like character writing as well, to have a sort of like useless one-off throwaway like let's get the diagnosis and get out feels like a real poor service to the OG movie when that's literally like a 20-minute scene.
you know what? You know what? I didn't really think about it, but I do actually think you're right there. There is something lost when. Does he even say stomach cancer?
No, he says nothing. He says, "I have the results. It's
Huh.
so hard to say," because it really pissed me off when I watched it the first time. Because maybe it's like in the first 20 minutes of this movie that happens,
Yeah.
and it's a 2 or 3 minute scene, and I watched it with Tati, and I was just like, "Huh," you know. I paused it to be like, "It's already a different movie, and I think it'll be okay, but it's very different." And then obviously by the end, I was like, "Oh, I'm completely sold. This is the movie everyone should watch if
Yeah.
you don't watch Guru." But
Exactly.
it was jarring because of how, I mean, I'm just quickly mousing over that scene from Ikiru.
Hmm.
At the 12-minute mark it starts him walking into the doctor's office, and at 20 minutes he's going home. So it's literally 10 minutes of runtime in that film of him at the doctor's office. In this one, it's 1630 to 1750. It's like literally 2 minutes.
And yeah, it's almost serving the exact same purpose as it would have if he just told someone about it. We would have gotten the same, or if he read a piece of paper, you know? Yeah, I think actually
Exactly.
what you're saying is totally correct.
Yeah, we could have ignored the scene entirely in this
Hmm.
version because it did nothing to add any depth or complexity or layers other than gave us the diagnosis. But should he have gotten the diagnosis and just told the young girl a little earlier in this plot, I don't
Hmm.
think it would have been that much more sort of pivotally different.
No, not at all. I mean, 100%. Yeah, especially when they rip the levity and the humor, and it's just very upfront. What the doctor says is like, "This never gets easy." Oh, okay, and then move on. You know, and just okay. I guess that's the setup, uh, which is fine. But again, since we're comparing this to an original and this is a retelling, it does beg the question as to kind of why did they change that, or why did they feel the need to differentiate so much on that scene specifically, you know, for a movie that was otherwise super faithful. But
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what they would
yeah.
do that way.
Yeah, I didn't really give it much thought until you just brought it up. I didn't really have a problem, but now I kind of do. Now I kind of do. That'd be a little negative I could add, you know, PS postscript.
Hmm.
But honestly,
Any other
sorry, what?
any other qualms?
No, I don't think so. I was trying to think what else I have to say.
I have maybe one. It's not horrible. It is part of the thing that they added
Hmm.
where now our sort of second protagonist baton carrying
Mm.
babyface kid
Yes, Wake
um
something, Wakeman.
him falling in love with the girl who leaves, I would have been happier with if it was like not almost implicitly like given as an instruction in this movie. It almost seems like it was a part of that letter that he got that he should chase happiness by chasing this girl.
Yeah,
I don't know if that came
no,
across to you in that way.
I don't think I had an issue with it. I did think it was a little weird though.
Oh,
Uh,
exactly. So I don't like that it makes our protagonist, the guy who died, weird because in the other movie it was very clear this is like an innocent joy chasing, and despite him saying that out loud, now adding love into the mix and telling him he needs to find this girl love makes me think maybe he did actually love her. And if he was 50 and dying of a terminal illness, he would have pursued her. But
right.
because he's old and had a terminal illness, it's now like horrible and wrong. And I'm like, well, they're
See
both
my
adults. If they consented to it, it would have been fine. But the fact that it wasn't about love at all was the whole point. And now to make it about love is a little annoying.
yeah, my slight qualm with that whole thing is that you worked with this lady for one day and you're convinced you need to like ask her out. Like, okay, maybe it's a little slim pickings back then or some shit, but come on, dog, you literally don't know this woman. And then
Right.
at
Other
the
than
wake,
whatever's in the letter.
yeah, and then at the wake, you know, he's trying to ask her out. And it's like, I don't know if that's quite appropriate.
Yeah. It felt a little weird and forced, but again, I overall was still okay with it. It just like the removal of the stomach cancer diagnosis, etc. It does feel a clear deviation from the point of the first one.
Yes. Yeah, totally agree. And I'll add this since I'm running out of things to talk about. I was a lot more emotional with this than I was Ikiru.
Yep, I think part of that was that phenomenon I was discussing about they just had sort of suffer porn or torture porn, however you want to
Yeah.
describe it. And in this one, there was clear balance with the scenes and maybe some of that like um modern movie scoring where
The
you can
score.
feel the emotional swelling if it's done tastefully.
Yes, the score was phenomenal.
And so I think in that old one, from what I recall, outside
Not
of when there
amazing.
were songs,
Hmm.
the score was sort of like uh I don't know, stock music from the
Yeah.
50s kind of
I wouldn't
stuff, which
say distracting, but it didn't enhance anything.
right, right. It was just noise in the background.
Whereas Living score was fantastic and enhanced almost every single scene. Um, yeah,
Speaking of music in this,
yeah,
the song, I think I called that right. I think I said it was going to be 50s pop or some like, Celtic or
yeah,
otherwise, and I think it's a Scottish song.
yeah.
So
Got Scotch in me on my mother's side. I've got
yeah,
Scotch
and
in
then
me.
yeah, then they're like, yeah, you got plenty of Scotch in you.
No, that was great. And the just I mean, good, the fact that they took this old folk song I've never heard or know anything about, that's only a good thing. There's nothing, they no complaints whatsoever with that part.
Yeah,
Eh,
I think a good song. I think surprisingly at the pub he like sang it well. I think it was a little more like dreary, but sort of like that again finality, for lack of a better word, when he's swinging on the set.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, when he's in the pub, I was like, this is really nice actually. And of course, there's still like that emotional underbelly to it. But and again, maybe it's the lighting. Maybe black and white movies, it's hard to get a sense of the vibe of a scene
Kind
outside
of.
of the clear dialogue options and like facial expressions.
Yeah.
In this, the lighting can dictate the mood. You know that the kitchen scene isn't going to be that intense because it's just so bright and colorful. Like
Right.
it's a vibrant scene.
Yeah, and
There's tension there, there's weight there, but it's not jarring and it's not like down or depressed.
yeah, and I'll even say that that honestly applies to the end scene too. Just the subtlety of the snow and the blue almost turning to white. There was almost it added just a sense of closure to it where just even visually there's a closure to it. Where I was literally, I mean, I think I had A tier come down, whereas Ikiru, I was like, oh yeah, that's sad, you know?
Right, right.
But I don't know whether it's Bill Nye, a combination of all the good things we've said. I don't know. But I was like, oh God, please don't die. Even though, he died an hour in or whatever, hour and a
Right.
half in. And
The
I
Go ahead.
want to talk about that. The death transition I think was done a lot more tastefully. Because he's going out to the park and you see the sunlight and it fades into the death scene or the wake scene, sorry. Whereas Ikiru is just bam, dead.
I gotta say, I don't even recall how they do the death. I think, don't we just show up at the house?
Yeah, well, which one? Ikiru or living?
Ikaru.
Yeah,
He's
Ikiru
like
is
he's
literally
working,
just
and then
boom,
and then
wake.
then we are at the wake. Yeah.
Whereas living had a transition where he opens the door and the camera pans to the light outside and then we get the death. I think that's a lot smoother and it took a quarter of a second. You know, it's not
Right.
like it was this big transition. It was just a subtle improvement upon the original's abrupt, I mean, so abrupt change in tone and linear storytelling. But
I think
yeah,
my last point, just because again we didn't go into as many specifics of this film, just by the nature of thinking it's good and people should watch it, maybe, um, was the we commented on the direction, like the setting up of scenes, the use of these mirrors and reflections is phenomenal, but
mm,
specifically the scene transitions,
hmm
or not even the scene transitions, but like the set transitions within a scene are also really good. When we do that thing of, again, not as crazily, but when we're going between the buildings and the office, um, actually in that ending train scene when it transitions from like snowy to spring, like just so many cool transitions and camera work things that are done in this one that again may have been done somewhat in the first one, but were also again now in comparison clearly not as good.
yeah. Well, Ikiru. I mean, if we're talking about like the talking head scenes where we're going to each branch of the government or whatever,
Yep, yep,
yeah,
yep.
Ikiru was literally just that slide transition, boom, slide transition, boom, slide transition, boom. Whereas Living kind of played around with, okay, they're going up these stairs now and they're doing this and then doing that, and that there was a general flow to it.
Yeah, I think that was my last point to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is that this was a fantastic movie. Ikiru is by no means a bad movie. I would never say Ikiru is a bad movie. But if you were to pick one of these two to watch, I would probably lean towards Living.
Agreed. Full stop. I don't think I can give a single recommendation other than one, you like old movies, or two, want to view classics that you need to watch Ikiru when this movie exists.
Right. Or, maybe you're Japanese and you just want more Japanese culture. Like, maybe, okay, then Ikiru for sure. But,
Sure, that's fair.
But
That's
just
fair.
a blind point of view, I would say Living. I think that's my final verdict.
Me too. And I don't really know about scoring movies, but I think this is honestly a top film for me, Living.
Yeah.
I don't know, like top 10, but clearly like one of the better movies I've made. As we said, there's maybe a flaw or two, only in the sense it's a remake. If there was no Ikiru, this would be perfect movie.
Exactly. Yes, 100%.
But because there's Ikiru, I have something to base it off of, and there are two clear issues.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, phenomenal movie that I definitely will be recommending people to watch.
Yeah, literally can't praise enough, and I'll be suggesting it to anyone who, like, I don't know, wants a sad movie. All right, bang, Living, you need that. Anything else? Any closing remarks?
Bill Nye's the GOAT?
I mean, that kind of goes unsaid, especially since last week we just assumed, no doubt in our mind, we just assumed he would tear it up, and he fucking tore it up.
No.
But
and, maybe if Ishiguro, the screenwriter, has another movie, you have to look out for that. But I don't. This might be a one-off because he's a novelist by trade.
Yeah, check out his books or something. I don't know. They're probably okay.
No. I was reading through the wikis on them. They look really good. I mean, obviously, he won a Nobel Prize for one of them. So.
Right. I mean, he's got to be decent. He's got to be decent. Yeah,
he's literally knighted.
You got to be at least okay. Not saying you're the best, but you got to be okay. Other than that, I think this concludes the first episode of our series, Reboot or Deboot, name pending, just because I kind of don't like the name, but at the same time, I don't know a better one. That's it for me. I'm Noah Davis. Oh, did you want to do I'm John Pina or no? Okay, well, John DC'd, so I will do the outro. That is this episode of Reboot or Deboot. We will see you in 2 more weeks when we tackle The Heartbreak Kid and its reboot, The Heartbreak Kid. Peace.
They're the worst.